the whole sort of communication thing, like online, which is something that we didn't have, 10 years ago to this extent. It gives us a sort of way of seeing what people in other places are doing. So for example, the US are, in just about everything, they're leagues ahead of us. So when we see all these amazing brands and hair product companies that they've got, we see that and we're like, oh wow, I'd love to have a goody comb or a beautiful steamer or whatever, and now stuff is slowly starting to come over. So when you do find it, this was on eBay, which I found, I was very happy to find it. You do sometimes jump at the chance, because if people over there are sort of raving about it, you kind of think, what can that do for me? Which is what I suppose did with this. And I know that it is completely different to like a typical Afro comb. They are very very different, but I think they both definitely have their merits. So it'll be interesting to see sort of what this does, and whether it really is ouchless, and whether they'll be pulling out chunks of hair.
So do you use all those combs that you've got?
This one, I think, I also bought it for the shower as well, because I have a tendency to leave combs everywhere. I've got one at my boyfriend's, one in my room, one in the bathroom, etc, etc. I used this one I used when I first went natural, because I sort of went natural twice, because I lost it, as I was saying in the interview, I lost it all to a relaxer, and eventually had to chop the lot off, and it grew back, but it grew back damaged, and grew back damaged, chopped it off again, and then, so I was still natural at that point, and then the hairdresser convinced me to texturize it, which was a big mistake. And throughout all of that, because it never got very far, I was using this, especially to pick it out into sort of like a perfect sort of sphere shape as much as I could. And I also use this one because I think I was, again, not sort of very educated, I suppose, or maybe had a sort of slightly wrong impression of what different tools can do, and I sort of assumed that, wow, this is small, and it's got the sort of different prongs on it, so that will detangle my hair. Amazing. Never thinking about the amount of damage it could do, pulling this thing through my hair. But so it's quite interesting for me to keep them and see the different stages of where I've sort of gone through and learned different things. To go from that to that, for me, is quite a good thing, quite a big thing, really. So and that goes back to the whole sort of documenting your natural hair journey. I think there's quite a few different ways in which you can do that, and for me, the various tools that I use, they're kind of like war medals in a way.
Do you know when the Afro comb was invented?
I'll be absolutely honest, I don't. I knew it dated back to sort of Egyptian times. I knew that before we came here today, before I heard about the event, but I couldn't tell you exactly when in history it happened.
So how do you know it was ancient Egypt?
Again, learning from things at school and just things I've picked up and heard, but I never really knew the actual sort of history of where and when and who and all that kind of thing. I just knew it was sort of dating back to Egyptian times rather than Egypt.
Okay. And do you have any stories, maybe from childhood or from any other time, that you want to share about hair or comb?
I think I was very. I was brought up. No, not I was brought up. When it came to going to school, it was very. There weren't a lot of other black girls there. I think at one point I was the only one in the whole upper junior school at one point. So when I'd go to friends' houses and see like the hair brushes and the hair bands that they use, I'd immediately want to copy them. And as I was saying, at one point fringes were in, and I thought, that's amazing. I want a fringe. Had convinced my mum to let me have one cut in. It wasn't a good idea. It didn't go down. It went out, and that took a long time to grow out. But I think you know, even down to wanting to wear my hair in French plaits, for example, and seeing the other girls having their hair in French plaits, and you know, I'd wait until I'd had my hair put into extensions or whatever to see if I could do that as well, and I never could. It never quite had this. It was plaits upon plaits. It never had quite the same effect. But you know, when you're young, you do sort of want to be, especially with girls, and I was at an all-girls school as well, so you do kind of want to kind of go along with the crowd at that age. And when a lot of the crowd comes from a different culture, there's nothing wrong with the culture that you've come from, but at the same time, you know, you're of that age, and you know, all the other little girls are doing this, and you wanna do it too. I mean, I've always said that I'm so glad that Facebook and Twitter were not invented when I was at school, and I would always stand by that. But at the same time, I kind of wish I had the knowledge back then in like my late teens, early 20s about my hair that I do now. You know, because I think it could have saved a world of drama. Let's put it that way.
Okay, Ketishia, thank you.
No problem. Thank you.